Well, y'all, welcome to the second Prophecy Conference in Mississippi. We thank y'all for coming out. Hopefully we can stir up some discussion about what's really going on in the prophetic Word of God today on God's timeline. God is the one who has the prophetic timeline for everybody, not just Israel, but Israel is central in God's timeline. Many people have looked at this piece of land in association with the eternal land-based covenant that God made with Abraham when he said, "So help me, I'm going to do this." Put him to sleep, you remember? Walk through the cut pieces of animals as a flaming fire, a flaming torch. But some people have said that Israel is God's watch, and then you've got different hands that point to the city of Jerusalem, and then also the Temple Mount, which is getting more and more heated up in the news today. Now, I'm going to be kind of rapid fire to get through some of this, but it's very important, and I want to try to catch as much of it as I can. The 24th of Shavat, does anybody know what day that is? That's today. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Read Zechariah 1, 7 through 8. There's a rider on a red horse that's tied to the day on the biblical calendar, the 24th of Shavat. Now, if you're familiar with the horsemen of the apocalypse, this is not the red rider because the white one comes first in that scenario. This is a different red rider, and it's actually connected to the 24th of Shavat every year. So at some year, this Zechariah prophecy will be fulfilled. Now, I wanted to just focus on Israel because Israel is God's prophetic timepiece, right? Israel was born as a nation in 1948. We all know that was the super sign. Jeff and JB talked about that. And then in 1967, Jerusalem was reconquered. And this is after the diaspora, and they brought back after the Holocaust. And now we're waiting for, what's going on right now? We're waiting for the rapture of the church, right? But we know that Israel and God's plan for Israel will extend past the rapture of the church into something called Daniel's 70th week. And Daniel's 70th week is split into two halves. The first half is 42 months, or 3.5 years, or 1,260 days, times two. And it's very specific because there's no arbitrary ambiguity related to that timeline. And it starts on a very, very specific date, the Day of Atonement in some future date. And this is Daniel's 70th week. So Daniel had a prophecy that's of 70-week prophecy. 69 of those 70 weeks of years have already happened, and we're living in the gap between the 69th and the 70th. So when the 70th week starts, that's going to be the final 7 years with the return of Christ at the end of that. So Israel is going to go past the rapture of the church in unbelief. They're being raised up, Ezekiel 37, as a mighty army right now, but there's no breath in them. They're not believers. And we are, as Gentiles, provoking them to jealousy with our experience, saying, hey, you know what? We trust in your Jewish king. That's who we trust in. He's still alive. And then, of course, after the second coming of Christ, he establishes his millennial reign on the earth. Now, Israel has some enemies. We know that this is an ancient enemy of Israel. Remember when Daniel was praying, hey, Lord, give me a vision. Give me the answer to the vision that I had. He sent the answer, but it took him 21 days before he got the answer because the prince of the power of Persia was withholding his answer. You remember that? And so this same prince of the power of Persia is still active today because he's a spiritual entity. He's not tied to the boundaries or limitations that we are. And I believe he's acting through the Persians with a principality regional control over that region. And the Ayatollahs in Iran are really waiting on their Messiah to show up. They have something called the Mahdi, the 12th Imam. Many of y'all may have heard of this. And one of the objectives is to get rid of Israel so that he will return and convert the world to Islam. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Their theology is a little off there. But they also have a religious fatwa that they call it, saying that we will not use nuclear weapons. Well, somehow I don't really trust these guys, not to say, let's just pull the fatwa and use it when we get them. Because they are pursuing it for a reason, and that is to eliminate the so-called Zionist regime. Well, they've been trying to build a stranglehold around the Gulf waters, as you can see, and they've just been permeating the area on the sea and on the land through proxies, and their whole focus is to bring death to Israel, to accomplish the objective of Shia Islam and bring the Mahdi on the scene. Another thing that they're doing is they've created something called a ring of fire, a military strategy to use to put a chokehold around the Middle East so that they can start picking off everybody and get down to who they really want to attack. Now, unfortunately for them, Israel has an eternal land-based covenant. God said, I'm going to bring you back and put you in the land, never to be removed again. So what they're trying to do is uproot something God said is not going to happen. And what we've seen just recently in the news is this battle going back and forth between Israel and all of Iran's proxies. And October 7th was a pivotal year. I have to question, was this the beginning of the Psalm 83 war that we read in Scripture? If so, this gives us a pretty big feel for where we are in relation to the rapture of the church, right? Because we know that Israel is going to be a mighty army, exceedingly great in the last days. And this is something that the Lord's given them to target these folks. And the reason for it is because the job has never been finished. I'll try to get into that. But in 1973, October 7th, during the Yom Kippur War, I believe that was a year of Jubilee, and that took place after they had conquered Jerusalem, recaptured it, and they won. They won that war. 50 years later to the day, Hamas jumped the gun. And I think Iran was trying to coordinate all these proxies, say, let's get Israel and attack them on the same day. But Hamas wanted the glory, so they jumped the gun on. But if you look at the timing, it was exactly 50 years to the day of the Yom Kippur War during the year of Jubilee in 73. There's also a neat connection that I see that's tied to this evil plan that Hamas put into place, and that's 666 days from that attack. It falls on the 9th of Av, August 3rd, 2025. Now, what's going to happen? Well, if you know something about the 9th of Av, that's when the first temple was destroyed in 586 BC by Nebuchadnezzar, right? You remember that, the Babylonians? And then in 70 AD, the temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av as well. Remember that? The Romans. Well, if you're a Jew and you're saying, Lord, we want to worship you in the way, that they worship, but they don't have a house of worship, right? A central house of worship. How would you be joyful if he were to flip it, make the 9th of Av a time of great joy? Well, the news would come out about taking a step toward reestablishing a third temple. That might be one way to do it. Now, I'm saying might because I'm not up here saying thus saith the Lord on that, but we're going to see together as watchmen. Now, I consider myself a co-learner with you guys. We have experts here, but I'm just a co-learner with you guys, so feel free to realize that. Now, another thing that might happen on the 9th of Av, as far as that goes, is that there might be some announcement about the temple in relation to the sacrificial red heifer ceremony. It's not actually a sacrifice, it's more of a ceremony that says, we're getting ready to go up on the Temple Mount. See, they can't do that right now because they'll be ceremonially unclean without the ashes of the red heifer and the living water. And in the Middle East, water is very important. And the living water is even more important than just regular water. And in this case, when a heifer is sacrificed to have the ashes of purification according to the Levitical priesthood, they use this living water that's flowing, and they mix it in with these ashes, and then they sprinkle it on the priests who are able to go up ceremonially and start the temple worship. So one of the spokesmen for the Al-Qassam Brigades recently came on television and said on the 100th day anniversary of the beginning of October 7th, The reason why we're doing it is because they started talking about and getting ready to do the ashes of the red heifer ceremony. That's the reason they gave. So, are they not important in prophecy? Yes, absolutely. These ashes of the red heifer are very important. There's a man in Mississippi who started this whole thing by reading his Bible. And we've talked about him in the past. But these ashes can't be just burnt, anytime they have a cow, they just can't go after it. They have to wait till they're a certain age. Now, these cows that they have now came from Texas. They had 5 of them sent over, $100,000 each, $200,000 flight, $700,000 just for these 5 cows. Brought them in, put them down in Shiloh. Shiloh is a very important location. Now they're ready. They're ready. Not all of them are qualified, but 2 are still qualified from what I understand, maybe 3 quasi-qualified. So they're very important. They're also training the Kohanim over there, and they've got the ability to determine whether or not they can serve in the temple because of the DNA. They've got this special DNA marker that says, okay, you can serve because you're one of them. And this is something that we see here where they've been performing practice runs, with these kids who are fit to be ceremonially doing these services. While they're talking about this, they also have been running ads, if you will, not necessarily in the paper, but saying, hey, we're going to build this temple. What do we need? We need an architect and we need a builder. Of course, they need money too, but that's taken care of because God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Cattle on 1,000 hills. So when they're calling for an architect and a builder, what do you think they're going to get? An architect and a builder. Isn't that something? Now, you tell me that it's just coincidence. Woo! Well, they're starting to talk about building in Gaza already. But look at what he's doing. He's treating Bibi like a king. We were talking about kings earlier, right? There was, I think it was JB, he had a picture of King Trump up there. And some people go a little far with that, but these guys are really in God's master plan to bring about the fulfillment of prophecy, in my opinion. We'll see how that goes. Now, here's one example. When Netanyahu was first prime minister, he got elected. He was running against Shimon Peres. And in his first prime minister run, 96, he won by 1 percentage point against Shimon Peres. He went to the Western Wall and he prayed to the Lord. And he said, in that day, quoting Amos 9:11, I will raise up the fallen tabernacle of David and close up the Peres, the breaches. This is the guy's name he was running against, by the way. I will raise up his ruins and I will build it as in the days of old. So here we see an architect talking about, I'm going to build David's fallen tabernacle. That was in like 96. Now, in days of old, how did they build? They had a weapon in one hand and one of those with cement deals in the other. You know what you call that? I forgot, a trowel or something like that. Here he is. This is in his office. What do you notice on the wall there? Picture of the tabernacle, right? He's thinking about it. God's put it in his heart. He's prayed about it. We know that. And what 2 people have the world been trying to get out of office for so long? These 2 guys right here. If you remember back in President Trump's first term, he went in there. He said, you know what, I'm gonna move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Let's forget about all this World War III talk. We're just going to do it. And he did it. And when did he do it? May 14th, 2018, the 70th year anniversary. I mean, boom. This sent shockwaves throughout all of Israel. And they've made a coin that had Cyrus, the King Cyrus picture on it next to President Trump. And so the intent there is recognized. God blessed America because of what Trump was doing. Genesis 12:3 is in play here. The world doesn't like that. Tried to get rid of him. He just happened to just turn his head a little bit, about a quarter of an inch or so. Some people say that's really what was going on. Not today, Satan. God spared him. You know, I'll have to be honest, there's no way he's going to get back in there. The deep state is there. They own all the voting software. I mean, they're in every, it was really looking dark for a while there. But he got elected. I'm like, if he got elected, they're going to come up with something. He's not going to get inaugurated. He got inaugurated. He got certified. And he's back in the White House. And the first guy he brings to the White House is Benjamin Netanyahu, who said, I'm going to rebuild the fallen tabernacle of David. And that's in his heart what he's saying. So they're already sitting there making some deals. Now he's got an office of religion or something to that effect, but Franklin Graham was invited to the inauguration. And he recognized that this was a miracle of the Lord, that he actually got back in there. Look what God has done, he says. So I've got this little picture here. This is what's going on. He hit a pause button on the globalist agenda. I just picture that big TV remote, the one that you always lose in the couch. This one's big. It just went boom. He shut them all on pause. And you've got all this George Soroses and everybody you can see there. We've been living with that. But look right over the shoulder. There's Nebuchadnezzar's image. The globalists have a plan. There's going to be the gold head, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and revived Rome. And that's in Scripture. That's not going to be stopped, but it's going to be paused. It's going to be paused long enough for God to work into his plan to get the temple built over there. But guess who's the temple right now? The church. We are. So do you think we're going to be around when that temple gets up there? I don't believe so. So that's kind of an interesting play on where we are in this world situation. All right, so what happened between his 45 run and the 47th run? There was a transformation, was there not? He credits God for saving his life, and he believes he's being used in God's purposes. So this is another little way people react to it. Here's a guy. I smell hippies wearing the red hat. That right there is my dad. So that just tells you a little bit about how some people react. I said, Dad, you might want to watch out wearing that red hat downtown, because people, they react different ways. Here's another way people react. The Sanhedrin over in Israel wrote a letter to Trump. You, my sir, have been elected to fulfill a heavenly mission. Now, I'm not saying that. They're saying that, right? So we'll see how that goes. Ultimately, God he removes kings and he raises up kings. That's in Daniel 2:21. And the ultimate goal that God has put into place is to checkmate, to restore the relationship between him and humanity. By bringing his king and setting him on the holy hill of Zion and saying, this is the real king right here. You've had all your kings, all your powerful leaders, and what has it brought? It's brought death, destruction, slavery, and keep going with the list. The elites have a great time. But this is the ultimate goal. Mashiach, Psalm 2:6, but as for me, I've installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. Now, the head of the United Nations doesn't believe that a Jew should be in Jerusalem. He's calling for Jerusalem, old city, to be Jew-free. Well, what about this king right here? Here's Macron, interesting, Jerusalem Post. Macron, Israel was created by the UN. Netanyahu should not forget it. Israel was created by the UN. Okay. I don't think he understands what's going on. This is kind of world government type mentality. And we see all the way back to Nimrod. Over in Europe, they've got a building. It looks just like this Tower of Babel right here. And it's intentional. Well, Netanyahu pops up. Jeff has a great pop-up series he does online called end-time players. And I hope he's going to do one on this man right here, because he might end up being one. And the reason I say that is because he has proclaimed that he's going to correct King Saul's mistake. Do y'all know King Saul? You remember King Saul? King Saul was told by Samuel the prophet, God says go in and get rid of the Amalekites. He said, okay, we'll go in there. Well, he kept some of them. Then Samuel comes up, what is this bleating of the sheep I hear? Bring the king to me. Samuel killed the king because Saul didn't do what he was supposed to do. But the Amalekites, they have been a thorn in the side of Israel for years and years. And there's this prophecy about the Amalekites being completely wiped out. Over in Gaza, which, by the way, is the territory of Judah. That's the royal line of the tribe of Judah. That's the territory that they're operating in right now. Yahya Sinwar, you may have heard of him. They had a little drone, flew into this destructive building. They saw a guy sitting in a chair. Oh, Yahya Sinwar killed him. Gaza. The United States, meanwhile, is giving money through these organizations to build the tunnels with the concrete, with your tax dollars. And we see the faces of people who, upon seeing their loved ones from Hamas, and it looks like the Holocaust when they came out. You know, emaciated bodies. It's like Holocaust all over, Hamas and evil monsters. And I believe that Netanyahu's in a position now where he can say that he's going to finish the job that Saul started but never completed. Here's another parade of the babies and the mother and the elderly gentleman who were just released. I believe they released 6 today, did they not? Was 6 more? Yeah, so. But there's also some shenanigans going on. And the babies were released, but the mother, it wasn't the mother, it was just somebody they found, and threw it. So they're playing back and forth. They're getting tired of it. As soon as they get as many hostages out as they can, they're going back in there. The IDF confirms that the 4 caskets handed over by the Red Cross, believed to contain the bodies of Israeli hostages, have undergone security screening. Troops ensured the locks could be opened because they locked it and threw the key. You gave them a different key. It didn't work. And a military ceremony led by the IDF Chief Rabbi Brigadier General Ayal Karim is set to begin shortly. This was a few days ago. What are they reading over the caskets? They're reading Psalm 83 over the caskets, draped in Israeli flags. Not a coincidence. Here's Psalm 83. They make shrewd plans. Now, some people believe this is an imprecatory prayer, just a prayer against your enemies. I believe it's a prophecy that has not been fulfilled. And what we see is a guaranteed list of who's on the target list in God's eyes. They make shrewd plans against your people and conspire together against your treasured ones. They've come and said, let's wipe them out as a nation so that the name of Israel will no longer be remembered. For they have conspired together with one mind. They make a covenant against you, and that you is capitalized as God. The tents of Edom, the Ishmaelites, Moab, Agrites, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek. There's Amalek. The Philistia, Tyre, Assyria has joined them. So here we see a list of the names and what's motivating this group that has conspired as a confederacy to move against Israel. They're doing it right now. Now, up in the north in Lebanon, what Israel is trying to do is get them to implement the Security Council Resolution 1701, just as a minimum, get everybody off the northern border of Israel so that the people can live up there without getting bombed. So they're saying if they don't move up to the Litani River, then Israel is going to stay there. And Israel created 5 enclaves where they're not coming out until the Lebanese army takes care of Hezbollah that's hiding around down there in southern Lebanon. They tried to kill Netanyahu with a drone strike on his residence. So Israel launched Operation Iron Swords. And if you look at the Hebrew here, you've got Lebanon. It's a prophecy. Lebanon will fall by the mighty one. The mighty one in Hebrew is called Adir. And that just also happens to be the name of the new F-35I airplane that they're using in this war against Lebanon. Adir, the stealth bombers. Well, Hezbollah woke up one day, and all of a sudden, all these pagers went off. And half of the Hezbollah top elite, like 3,000 people, started getting blown up, their fingers, everything. And it was like, what's going on? And they said, we got these old pagers because we didn't want to use the smart telephones. And Israel had already used Mossad to send them all these pagers, and it was a wonderful military move against Hezbollah. It also identified people who were saying, I don't have anything to do with Hezbollah, but yet they were blown up as well. So instead of from the river to the sea, it became kind of a joke, from the liver to the knee. The Palestinians will be free. Here's one unfortunate guy. Whoo, that one right there was a bad one. Here's a guy saying, well, we still won. Here's my victory salute. But Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader, the Shiite leader, and he's the one who was kind of instigating all this. They took him out. So now you've got Gaza and Lebanon, and they're just kind of crippled. Well, when Hezbollah got crippled, Bashar Assad down in Syria, he got a little scared because he didn't have the backup that he'd always had. And all of a sudden, this new guy who was supported by Erdogan, Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, he supports him and this jihadist, and they start rolling down toward Damascus. And everybody's like, where's Bashar Assad? Well, he fled. And this new guy pops up as all of a sudden Syria's new leadership, and Damascus falls. Now, Damascus didn't completely get obliterated, so that's a future prophecy. But it has fallen into the hands of some people who nobody really knew who they were. And this guy is the de facto leader, Ahmad al-Shara, also known as Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. And Jolani is Golan Heights. That's where he was born. He wants it back, and they're going after it eventually. We just watched that. So the new Syrian leadership backed by Turkey. Everybody in this new guy's leadership is from Turkey. So here's Bashar. He pops up over in Moscow. He fled Damascus. Well, while he's gone, Israel said, it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. So let's go in there and start bombing all these places where they already knew. Syria had stored chemical weapons and caches of missiles. And they took up the Golan. They went up to Mount Hermon, and where they could see over into Damascus at the highest point and as far as geography in that area. So Israel's now on Mount Hermon. They're not leaving. They're also in Lebanon. They've got 5 spots in Lebanon. They're not leaving there either. And eventually, we're going to talk about it. They were going to go down into some other places. Israel warns Iran with a strike. So Iran starts saying, oh, they're hitting our proxies. And then all of a sudden, they started shooting back and forth just a little bit. And Netanyahu's probably sitting back there going, why don't we wait for Trump? See, waiting for Trump. Because back this time, Biden was still in office, and his whole group was saying, you can't have the bunker buster bombs. We're sorry. I know you bought them, but... So it kind of slowed down. But if you notice in that little orange section there, right on the water, is a place called Elam, and that's an ancient area. And there's a prophecy associated with that place getting struck before the Ezekiel war. So we find that in Jeremiah 49, verses 35 through 38. And I can't read it all. It's kind of small up there. But if you look, it says, I will bring upon Elam the 4 winds from the 4 ends of heaven, and will scatter them to all these winds. And he goes on, and look down there, he says, even my fierce anger declares the Lord. Something's made God angry about what they're doing. And then I will set my throne in Elam and eliminate there the kings and the officials. So really they're talking about the Persian leadership, and where their nuclear reactors are, the strength that they have in the military aspect. So how many of y'all remember the president of Iran and the foreign secretary? They were on a helicopter, and it just blew out and just crashed, you know? That just happened recently. And they're like, well, what happened? Well, there was just a wind gust, you know, that happened to, and well, no, it's probably tied here to, and eliminate from there the kings and officials section. Bunker busters. President Trump has released 4,700 bunker buster bombs in addition to the 1,800 that they bought already. So they're trying to find places to put. They've had so many of them, 30,000 pounds each. And then President Trump invited Netanyahu to the White House. And here's what Netanyahu said. And today he says this: the roar of the Lion of Judah is heard loudly throughout the Middle East. And I believe what he's saying here is he's going to finish the job. All right? The Lord will roar from Zion and thunder from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth will shake. This is Joel chapter 3:16. In Numbers 23:24, behold, a people rises like a lioness, and like a lion it raises itself. It will not lie down until it devours the prey and drinks the blood of those slain. So once the lion rises up, it's not going to stop until it completes the task. You see there? Well, this word, a call, shows up in some very interesting places in the Scripture. So it gives us kind of a time stamp and a wording stamp of associated activity. Now, Judah is the royal tribe, the tribe of the lion of the tribe of Judah, right? Judah is a lion's cub from the prey. Now, Jacob gave blessings to his children that would happen in the end days. And so this is for the last days. From the prey, my son, you've gone up. He crouches, he lies down as a lion. As a lion, who dares stir him up? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until Shiloh comes. And to him be the obedience of the peoples. Now, it's interesting that we see the royal tribe is Judah. But what happens in the future is not Judah at first. What America has said is, hey, we're gonna have Gaza. We're gonna buy Gaza. President Trump is like, yeah, we're gonna buy it. And so this is a two-state solution, in that Judah is the tribe that owns the area associated with Gaza. So here's President Trump. Hey, this could be, like Singapore, a great, wonderful place. We're going to build it out. Here's the Riviera. This is AI is so fun sometimes. This is what they're planning on doing with Gaza. Building it out. High-speed rails everywhere. From Kiryat Shimona in the north down to Eilat down the south. Troop movement from north to south, fast. Tributaries go to Jerusalem, other places that are planned. And here's another plan on the books that Egypt is not going to like this. It's called the Ben Gurion Canal. And if you could take the Gulf of Aqaba up to the Mediterranean Sea and pass right just north of Gaza, you don't have to go through the Suez Canal anymore. And Israel is planning on doing this. So you see the flags there, Saudi Arabia. Now, right now, Israel forces have taken control of 6 water sources in Syria, accounting for 30% of Syria and 40% of Jordan's water supply. Now, the living water is more important, but water is very important too. And when the tribulation happens, we see that the water is going to be tainted with something called wormwood. It's going to be bitter, and people are not going to have water. But the Middle East will survive. Israel will survive that. Another thing that's going to happen once you get past that into the beginning of the tribulation is that these 2 witnesses are going to show up. And I believe personally Moses and Elijah, and there are reasons for that. They represent the law and the prophets. But what they did was one of them stopped the rain and the other one turned the water to blood. And there's going to be global water problems then. And here's Trump. The next guy he brought in the custodian of the gold dome with the rock, king of Jordan, and said, you know what, we're going to put some Palestinians over in your place. you in Egypt, that's where they're going. He's like, what do you think about that? You know, he's got some eye problems when all that happens. How about a shock headline next? Trump suggesting moving the Dome of the Rock. That would be shocking, wouldn't it? It's something I think he might say one day. The Saudis are kind of already saying it. Saudis say Temple Mount and Al-Aqsa are not important to Islam. They got Mecca and Medina. They got high-speed rails between both of them. Hey, let's go talk to Saudi Arabia. Jordan's ready for war. The peace treaty with Jordan will probably break soon because the Psalm 83 scenario plays out. They're in the list. Egypt said, I'm not even going to shake Trump's hand. I'm going to create my own 5-year plan, and we're going to stick it out there. And the Palestinians can stay right where they are. Guess what? That's probably not going to work. And all of a sudden, Saudi Arabia pops up in the news as being important, an important dealer. So here we see Russia and the U.S. going to hold talks on the Ukraine all of a sudden in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, also known in the Bible as Sheba and Dedan. If you look at Ezekiel 38, this is the war of Gog and Magog. Russia and their Magog alliance is coming down, and there are 2 country names, Tarshish, Sheba and Dedan. Spain is Tarshish. Some say it's England or UK or whatever. But I believe Tarshish is Spain. They have a king there, but this guy's not king, but he's almost king. And he's already the one kind of in the middle of this brokership going on with the Ukraine and the U.S. and the Russia over in Saudi Arabia. So when the Ezekiel 38 war happens, because there's a never-before alliance that has formed in these last days to come against Israel, we know that's going to happen. We see in the future. And these players have never been connected to before in the past. That alliance is coming. So by 2030, Spain and Saudi Arabia have this vision to accomplish all this stuff. These are the custodians of the Mecca and Medina holy sites, and they've got Tarshish, Spain, and Sheba and Dedan there having a 2030 agreement. Now here's a guy, he pops up, he's kind of a mysterious guy, getting all this money, and he calls for a European armed forces at the Munich security conference they just had. So we can't rely on the U.S. anymore. They may actually say, because you're not paying your toll over there at NATO, we're going to pull out of NATO. It's got Europe all messed up. They're like, what do we do now? Trump's in office. He's saying that, So Zelensky's playing up on that. And he even turned Trump down recently in a deal. So Zelensky, he's this guy. He wants some support from Europe. So he goes over to Europe during this NATO summit, and he meets with this guy whose name is he's Tarshish in the Bible, in my opinion, or his country is. But the guy in leadership in the king position there is not only given the king of the Spanish king title, he also has a title that's backed by an ancestral papal bull all the way backed by the Vatican to protect holy sites in Israel, in particular in Jerusalem, and particular on the Temple Mount. And so this Catholic Crusader king of Jerusalem is a Greco-Roman king. He's the only one in the world with that Vatican title. He's shaking hands saying, hey, don't worry, Mr. Zelensky. We're woke over here. And then you have the Pope. Is he still in the hospital? Does anybody know? He's in bad shape. He's got 1.5 lung. He had one lung that works, and he's got double pneumonia and bronchitis, and I think he's septic, so there's some stuff going on there. But he's been pushing this false doctrine and making it okay, and that's playing into this as well, this last day scenario. There have been people who've written books saying that the last pope would be called Peter the Roman. I remember the guy's name. I think it's Tom Horn who wrote the book. Is that right? JB, you probably know. Tom Horn, yeah. Well, here's this guy who's like the Secretary of State. He could be the next pope. And he's Italian secretary. His name is Cardinal Peter Parolin. He's from Rome. or from Italy. So he's actually a Roman. And so we've got Tarshish, we've got Sheba and Dedan, we have the king of Jordan, and king of Jordan is over Petra. And Petra is prophesied to play an important role in the future. In particular, at the midpoint of Daniel's 70th week, or Jacob's trouble, when the Antichrist steps in and he says, I'm God, then Jesus advises, hey, y'all flee to the wilderness. This is where they're saying they may go. So Tarshish and Jordan have multiple projects between Alhambra and Petra. It's kind of like sister projects, you know. We support your cultural, United Nations Education Scientific, UNESCO. It's a Catholic intelligentsia education group that supports cultural ideologies. And they both have these world locations where they're in union working together, like sister locations. But they both got together and stressed that we need to work on this thing over in Gaza and Lebanon because, you know, we had the Madrid conference in 91. Netanyahu was a delegate there. And the Land for Peace principle was established at the 91 Peace Conference. And, of course, what did Israel get when they gave up Gaza? They didn't get peace. They got missiles. So that principle doesn't work. Ariel Sharon knows that to this day. So Madrid 2 is probably in the works. It's being discussed already between these key end-time players, in my opinion. Now, for the sake of time, I want to jump back to this word that jumped out related to destruction, and it's called a call. Now, where did it pop up when Jacob was talking to his kids? It popped up when he was blessing Benjamin. And Benjamin is a wolf. He will prey in the morning, boker. He will devour a call, plunder. And in the evening, Ereb, he will divide the spoils. So this is talking about Jacob's son. But Benjamin was not his real name. His mother named him. Rachel died, and she named him Ben-Oni, son of my birth pangs or my sorrows. Y'all remember that? So there's some symbolism here that's tied prophetically to not just this person, but to the spirit of the person in the future. Kind of like John the Baptist is not Elijah, but yet he is. You know what I'm saying? But this word, a call, is used in his blessing of Benjamin. And if you look over in Jeremiah, we talked about it. It says, I will set fire to the wall of Damascus. It will devour. And there's that word, a call. Damascus is in Isaiah 17 also is going away completely. Now this word fire is the two letters in Hebrew, Sheen, Aleph. Aleph Sheen, backwards, is really how you say it. It's Esh. And we'll see that word in somebody's name here in just a second. King Saul. Did you see the Sheen and the Esh up there? Yeah, Saul. Now, when Saul was the king, he was, you know what Saul means? We'll talk about that. There's this scripture over in 1 Samuel 10:6. It says, the Spirit of the Lord will rush upon you. You will be changed into a different man. So he's not Saul anymore, spiritually speaking. You see what I'm saying? The first king of Israel, they said, we want a king, we want a king. No, y'all don't need a king. We want a king, we want a king. All right, I'll give you a king. Give you King Saul. Wait a minute, something wrong here. He's a Benjamite. Look back over his shoulder, Rachel's tomb. One of the key signs was that it was Samuel. Samuel anointed. He said, one of the signs that you'll know that you're supposed to be king is that you're going to see some people, some men standing over by Rachel's tomb. They're going to do this. They're going to say, oh, your dad's not looking for his donkeys anymore, da-da-da. Well, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. He was changed, metamorphosized, if you will, into this king of Israel. But he's from the wrong tribe. But God allowed it. What tribe is supposed to be the king of Israel? Judah. Here's Saul. Well, to ask for is the word Saul. It also means to beg for. And they got what they asked for. But Saul didn't finish the job. You remember? Amalek. So along comes King David. But he was just a shepherd. Here he is staring at the biggest problem that in the house of David, said Saul didn't finish the job, spiritually speaking. Ruth, Boaz, Obed, Jesse, David, and then ultimately Jesus. So we see where this is headed. Now here's something. After King David and Solomon and the 12 tribes, they split. There were 10 in the north and 2 in the south, Judah and Benjamin. And King Ahaz, he was bad. He sacrificed kids to the demons. And he was... Here we see a shift from the king of the Benjaminite tribe over to the Judah tribe in the future that's going to last. And in Isaiah 7:3, we see where God says, hey, Isaiah, take your son named Shear-Jashub and go up to the end of the conduit, up the upper pool on the road to the fuller's field. Now, y'all know what a fuller is? He uses soap to wash clothes and, so I got this soap suds and everything on the slide here, just kind of remember so you can remember this. But it was in the context of the fuller's field where he said, ask for a sign. He said, I'm not going to test the Lord. He said, well, he's going to give you one anyway, house of David, kind of with frustration. And by the way, Shear-Jashub, the name of his son means a remnant will return. So it's very highly prophetic here. The virgin will give birth to a son. This is the king that's coming. Emmanuel, God with us. It was the prophet Isaiah and his son who confronted Ahaz and gave him the opportunity to ask for a sign. The Hebrew letters in the word sign are Aleph, Vav, Tav. These letters literally represent the meaning God nailed to a cross. Ahaz refused, but the sign was given anyway. If God be for us, who can be against us? The specific name Emmanuel was given, God with us, a son to be born of a virgin. Now this is interesting because up there near the fuller's field, there was a slope. You see on the top, there's like the city of David kind of slopes down. And there's this tunnel called Hezekiah's tunnel. Hezekiah was King Ahaz's son who became king after him. He was a bad king, and Hezekiah was a good king. And he, without engineering or anything, they dug from one end to the other through this rock. In case they were attacked, they had water inside of the city of David. And it was the pool of Siloam down there at the bottom where it all fell to. You see that at the bottom? And there was this guy working around there at Hezekiah's time who his name was Netanyahu. And he lost his ring. All right? I'm going to get back to that point. Well, Jesus was at the pool of Siloam. He saw a blind man. You remember that? He said he spit on the ground, put mud in his eye, go wash in the pool of Siloam. So he opened the eyes of the blind because of the pool of Siloam and all this that had been tied back to the revelation of Emmanuel coming. Then when Jesus was starting his public ministry, we see a lot happening. And right before the cross, he was transfigured. He was transformed, kind of like Saul, but this way, there's a Shekinah glory that Jeff talked about on the Mount of Transfiguration. Moses and Elijah. And we had, I think it was, who was that? Peter, James, and John? And went up there. Hey, let's build some booths out here, one for each one. They were talking about the cross, and it says in Mark 9:3, his clothes became dazzling white, such as no fuller on earth could bleach them. A fuller is the guy that, washes clothes and makes them bright white. They threw that little piece in there just so you'd catch it. Here's another transformation. And guess what? It's another Benjamite and another Saul. And this is after Jesus was ascended to heaven. But Saul became Paul because of the bright light that flashed over Damascus. Now, I personally believe this is when the Gentile ministry started. And it may give us a clue about when the Gentile ministry will wind down at the rapture of the church. If there's a bright flash over Damascus again and we go up. You see what I'm saying? Maybe so. I'm not saying that says the Lord. but it may end the same way it started. Here we got this evening in the morning wording here. This will be the fate of those who plunder us, Isaiah 17:14. Saul will bear my name before the Gentiles. Now we have Elijah. You remember Elijah? He was up on the Mount of Transfiguration, but before that, he left in a chariot of fire. Elijah. And one of the things that was interesting is you see this mantle floating back. He said, if you see me go, then you'll be blessed. Talking to Elisha. Well, Elisha did see him go because he had the prior revelation about him leaving. You know, he actually knew the exact day he was going to leave. Everybody knew that. That was in the prophecy circles. And so I think this is just, like I said, not thus says the Lord, but if we're talking to our friends that are Jewish, we say, hey, guess what? The rapture's going to happen. And if one day you see everybody gone, that's what happened. Then the day it happens, they're going to go, wow. And then they're going to say, hey, I'm going to follow the Lord because of that. The light bulb will go on. So Elijah may return at the same time as the rapture. And I'm just speculating here. In the same way he left. He left in a chariot of fire, did he not? Well, what's the world going to say? Oh, we saw all these flaming chariots and all that stuff, UFOs or what do they call them, AUPs now? But that's a principle that I think is important. Y'all remember Joseph was thrown into a pit by his brothers, but God intended it to be used for good. He was raised up to a place of prominence almost as big as Pharaoh. And he sent his brothers back. He sent his brothers back to get Benjamin. And he told his brothers, he said, you're not going to see my face again until I see Benjamin. That's interesting. Who was Joseph? Messiah ben Joseph. He's a picture of Jesus. Joseph is not Jesus. He's a picture of Jesus. Benjamin. He's not Benjamin. He's the son of the birth pangs in some case. So when Jesus sees the son of the birth pangs, they're getting close. He's about to reveal himself. You see what I'm saying? Now, I wish I had the video. I've got the video, but I'll tell you what it says. Netanyahu speaking to a group. In my office in Jerusalem, there's an ancient seal. It's a signet ring of a Jewish official from the time of the Bible. The seal was found right next to the wall. It dates back 2,700 years to the time of King Hezekiah. Now there's a name of a Jewish official inscribed on the ring in Hebrew. His name is Netanyahu. He goes on and he says, and his first name is my name, the same name as Benjamin, the son of Jacob. He says this publicly. And he's putting the ring on, making the connection. And he just announced, with Trump's support, I have no doubt we can and will finish the job. The war to defeat Amalek. That's a notice for Iran. The scripture says, I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Then I'll enter into judgment with them there, on behalf of my people and my inheritance, Israel, whom they've scattered among the nations. And what? They have divided my land. That's why he's angry. It's not their land to get. Now, Jehoshaphat, that's kind of a long name. Sometimes I'll go into these like fast food restaurants and, they say, well, what's your name? And they'll type it in, And I'll say, Jehoshaphat. Like, hey, spell it. I'm just messing with them, but hey, maybe they'll go read about it. Speaking of fast food restaurant, in the olden days, I used to get my Bible and go study for like 4 hours. In the back of the restaurant, drink coffee. And right, if you go down the street here, you turn left on Lakeland Drive, and you go down there, used to be a McDonald's right there. All right, so I was sitting back there in the back, drinking my coffee one day, and I was reading this verse. Now, this verse is 1 Samuel 2:10. It's read by every Jewish synagogue on Rosh Hashanah every year. I did not know that. And the reason they do that is because Samuel was born on Rosh Hashanah. And it's in the part of the Haftorah, and it's part of the regular readings. And it says this: those who contend with the Lord will be shattered. Against them he will thunder in the heavens. Thunder in the heavens. Here it is. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and will exalt the horn of his anointed. Well, I've got the word thunder highlighted there in red. Isn't this wild? A lion's roar, thunder, and the shofar blast are used to wake people up in Scripture. Well, when I read the word thunder, I heard a bomb go off in the McDonald's. Boom! It was so loud. I was like, what in the world just happened? I'm like, I was reading, I had it on my lips, in my heart. I was speaking it, the word thunder. This thing, boom. I'm like, whoa, I think I'm done for the day. I got in my car right up here. And I pulled up onto Lakeland Drive, and I started to drive, and off on the side there's a Blue Cross Blue Shield building, and right next to it's an empty field. And in the empty field, there was a tree split down the middle, and it was on fire, sputtering. I'm like, oh, lightning struck that tree. Right when I read that word, and I was thinking to myself, how many people in Jackson were reading the word thunder out of 1 Samuel 2:10 when that happened? Probably zero besides me. So I pulled my car over. I'm like, Kathy's not going to believe this. And while I did, right across from McDonald's there was a fire station full of what I call chariots of fire. So a fire truck pulls up behind me. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I hope I'm not in the way. I'm looking in my rearview mirror, and there's two guys up there. They were just like, it's in an empty field, one tree. It's not going to do anything. So they kind of look around, they talk, they get back on the truck, and they go back to the fire station. I'm like, all right, Lord, that was interesting. And I didn't hear an audible voice. But what I felt in my spirit was, transformative. Sorry. It's been a while. Kris, they're going to have to go back and fill out a report. You know what the report's going to say? An act of God occurred. They didn't do anything about it. I want your message to be different. Go out and tell my people that the true king is coming. The Lion of Judah is roaring. And the shofar is going to blow to announce his kingship. I'm like, whoa. I got to go home and get Kathy to come take a picture of me with this tree. You remember that? Whew. So I went home, told her, the story. Yeah, interesting, timing, coincidental. No, it was transformative. That's why I'm standing right here right now, telling you about it. Years go by. I said, I wonder what that report really did say. So I drove by there, went in there, said, hey, this happened this time and date. I had it in my Bible. They said, we can't give you that report, personal information. I said, okay, no problem. I got the message. Don't worry. I told it in my Sunday school class one day. It's a story. Years later, this guy said, hey, this is about 3, 4, 5 years later, the guy says in my class, tell us that story again about your the thunder. Call it my Moses experience, by the way. I said, yeah, I started talking, and he said, here's the report right here. I went by and got it. He was an alderman. And sure enough, it went in there and said, an act of God occurred. That's what the insurance people wanted to know. They didn't do anything about it, let it burn out. But it had extra information. This is funny. The captain's name was Captain White. What that said to me was, God can transform us. You remember the Mount of Transfiguration? The Fullers couldn't get his clothes that bright. Couldn't get his clothes that white. Where did the message about the Emmanuel take place? King Ahaz, the bad king, Isaiah. Up there near the Fuller's Field, the good news. More bubbles and water flowing that anywhere around, but that location was chosen by God to give that message about the coming king who would be God with us. Well, I read on, there was another guy with him, Officer Joy. Whew. I said, Lord, I got your message now. Captain White, I know who he is. He's the one who gives us his righteousness. We become white as snow. What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. Oh, how precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus. To you and I, we have no choice in this flesh of ours to make it to heaven. But the king of Israel, the king who's the royal tribe of Judah, he imputes that righteousness to us and makes us white as snow. And it's transformative. You're not going to believe this. Years go by and they tear that McDonald's down. Now y'all go right down here, turn, go see it. It's not there anymore. There's something else in its place. And there's more water and bubbles flowing there than any other place on that side of Lakeland right now. It's a car wash. They wash chariots of fire next door. Isn't that wild? Now across the street, of course, the empty field, years went by. They dug that field out. They put a body of water there, and this is what's there now. That's the fountain right there. That's where that tree was. It's not one, but it's three if you look at it real close. There were three men up on Mount Transfiguration, right? I was like, oh, I'm just putting these things together. You know, and some people may say, oh, that's all coincidence. But no, the Lord is sending us a message. The true king is coming. The lion is roaring now. The thunder is coming. And the shofar is about to be blown. So I'm going to blow it right now. Thank y'all.